2017 was a weird year for portable technology. While Essential was taking the scene by storm with one of the most dramatic and sexy-looking handhelds of the recent past, Apple gave us this sad little monstrosity. That's right, it's time to reflect on the iPhone X. Let's take a look.
I'll pick this up and check this out.
Even though most of my mobile device ownership history does overlap with the existence of the many iterations of iPhone that have been made available over the years, I've never actually possessed one before, despite the fact that I've had plenty of opportunities for momentary exposure. Now that this device is finally starting to dip below the $300 mark, I think that it's finally worth investigating and reporting on, however, free of the biases of mainstream smartphone reviewers. While I may criticize its pathetic and cringe-inducing aesthetics, I want to make clear that I actually have a lot of respect for this handheld, even if it is the polar opposite of the Essential phone in a lot of ways. As always, we'll start with platform design and ergonomics. The X is being billed as a 5.8-inch device, but with all of the cut corners and intrusions, that's obviously a total farce. GSM Arena accurately points out that its usable diagonal size is effectively around 5 inches, which I've found to be accurate. And for people who don't want or need a huge smartphone, this is totally acceptable. It's in around the same league size-wise as the HTC One M7, which is on the small side, but still entirely serviceable. And it does a lot with its space, remaining under 5.7 inches tall and 2.8 inches wide, while still retaining stereo sound. While it only has 3 gigabytes of memory, Apple's uncannily good software optimization makes this feel more like 4 gigabytes worth of multitasking on an Android handset, and their mobile chipsets have a reputation for being second to none in terms of both raw power and efficiency. While the original X does a lot of things really right, some of its biggest drawbacks stem from Apple's self-righteous and stubborn sense of pride. While its goofy-looking Samsung-sourced OLED screen gets very bright and is extremely well calibrated, Apple's refusal to relocate the fingerprint scanner to the back of the device led to their investment in slower facial recognition technology, which, while advanced and even rather impressive at times, isn't nearly as quick as the optical fingerprint scanners that we've come to expect. And speaking of speed, while nothing about the hardware or software is inherently slow, the overall tempo of the animations is so dramatic and generally floaty that it makes the software feel much slower to use than it actually is. The same goes for the way in which it forces the user to perform a dumb gesture, the on-screen telltale for which wastes even more display area just to go home, and the task switcher is nothing short of an exercise in uncertainty. Apple has made a number of improvements over the years to the iPhone software in the time since Steve Jobs left the company. For example, camera and flashlight gestures are now extremely fast and convenient to access. Also, the stock web browser's kinetic scrolling now feels much more Google-like in its implementation, despite the fact that still, to this day, no other web browser rendering engines are approved on the App Store. Chrome and Edge are still nothing more than a skin for the same tired old Safari. Curiously enough, Apple opened up their App Store to submission of third-party keyboards as of a few years ago, so that users could now replace the notoriously slow stock keyboard, which has been one of iOS's biggest shortcomings since the dawn of the iPhone. Google's excellent Gboard is available, to the relief of many, but it feels like it's been left in time somehow. While newer versions of iOS can switch between night, neon, and normal views based on time of day, Gboard is denied the ability to do this, unlike on Android, forcing me to use an awkward in-between coloration. But of course, Apple won't actually let the user enter passwords with a third-party on-screen keyboard, although this little trick with the stock keyboard dramatically helps with the entry of numbers. And then there's the launcher. Not only does it look hideous, but Apple's rushed efforts to make it work more like something that we'd see on a Samsung or LG just seems half-baked. Why does opening the app list always open the on-screen keyboard? Why is there not a dedicated button to close the on-screen keyboard like there is on every other touch-compatible computer operating system in the history of mankind? And why does it take so much effort to get an icon pinned where I want it in the launcher? Why are all of the widgets not vertically resizable? In fact, why do the icons not want to be placed in a spot where there are no other icons? Are they afraid that they'll become lonely or something? And why can there not be more than 4 icons in the highlighted area at the bottom? Why can't it go into landscape mode? The list goes on. And this is somewhat improved from where it all started. After all, you remember that iOS didn't even support launcher wallpapers officially until iOS 5, but it's still just horribly stiff and awful in general. The iPhone X is also perhaps the only modern mobile device that demands time in the review to talk about media storage. Third-party media players are available, but none of them can accept FLAC files. To get lossless audio, or even MP3s for that matter, onto an iOS device, the ever-annoying Tunes software has to first bless them and perform some kind of unholy conversion therapy before it does its secret handshake with the iPhone and finally copies the files. Doing that is irritating enough, but take a look at this uncut footage of trying to get a ringtone onto the iPhone. This is not a long way around parody or some crude joke. That's actually the only way to get notification noises onto an iOS device. How could anyone ever possibly be expected to figure something like that out on their own? At the end of the day, the iPhone X is a very bipolar and curious little device. In 2017, both of these handhelds were rather expensive. The Essential phone had an average screen, and the iPhone X an outstanding one. The Essential had a horrible speaker, but the X had the best speakers in the game, Moto X Pure Edition notwithstanding, of course. The PH1 had this goofy antenna setup that compromised significantly on radio performance, but the iPhone was available with a quality radio and normal antenna design. How about appearance? The Essential PH1 was beautiful, but iPhone X featured an alienating look that only a mother could love. While these were both best-in-class pieces of technology, it's amazing, even to me, how nuanced it all is. Perhaps the biggest difference, however, is price. iPhone X still sells on the used market in excess of $300, while the PH1 can be reliably procured for 1/3 of that. And while I could use either of these, I can think of a great many things that would be more worthwhile to put $300 or even $100 into. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me for the next one.